Hello and welcome to DFS Coach Talk. It is Friday, July 30th, 2021. I'm Andrew Hansen alongside Joe Sarvati, affectionately known as Coach, and we have a 4-game Olympic basketball slate to break down here, Coach, on DraftKings. We're back to Group A and Group B, and we're at the third game here for all these teams. So let's give an overview of where we stand here with Group A and Group B, because this is really going to play into the strategy here as teams fight for the opportunity to advance to the quarterfinals.
Absolutely. And hello there, Mr. Andrew. Great to see you on this wonderful Friday.
Yes,
hello,
sir.
members. Hello, listeners. Yeah, we're fired up here. I had the TGIF gifts going all over the Discord, so I'm fired up today, man.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So we've got, as everybody knows, and if you don't, I'll give you just a quick rundown real quick here. It's 3 groups of 4 where the 2 advance from each bracket. And Andrew will talk a little bit about the tiebreakers because that all comes into play, because in the Olympics, point differential is one of the first tiebreakers. So that is going to matter on how, we would look at some of these games. Group A, France is 2-0, USA is 1-1, the Czech Republic is 1-1, and Iran is 0-2. So it's going to be very cut and dry here because the U.S. plays the Czech Republic, and so that's done. Iran's out, and France is already in. So that's where that one lies. And then in Group B, which we knew we called it the group of death, as they do in the World Cup, and it has been rough. Nigeria, who was I think the 4th or 5th choice to win a medal here, is 0-2 with the danger of going 0-3. So they are not particularly out of it yet, though. So we'll let Andrew touch on that. But Australia's 2-0, Italy's 1-1, Germany's 1-1, and Nigeria is 0-2. So however these games work out in this set of games is going to determine who goes forward, and it could come down to point differential. And then it's pretty cut and dry in Group C. That's the non-interesting one, because Slovenia and Spain are 2-0, Argentina and Japan 0-2. So that's setting up, just especially like the Spaniards had hoped, so that they could, get some rest for their guys. And same thing with Slovenia with Lucas. So these matchups for them will be interesting also. So I wanted to touch on that so that, you can sort of get an idea, which we do have very clear one now, is, who's pretty comfortable that they're in, who's already eliminated. And then what Andrew's going to touch on right now, which is, if teams do end tied at 1-2 or 2-1, what is that differential and how does that work to advance?
Right. So couple different things to consider here. The 2-0 teams are in automatically. So it doesn't matter what France and Australia do today.
Right.
The way that the math works out, there cannot be more than 8 teams that have 2 wins, no matter what happens in all these games.
Right.
And as you mentioned, 2 teams from each group are going to advance, and then the 2 best 3 seeds. So that's where it comes down to these 1-2 records that we're going to see in the tiebreaker system. So the way that works after the win-loss tiebreaker is points differential, which you've talked about on our previous podcasts. And that's why these teams fight to the finish in all these games. So we're going to mix in the information on the points differential for these teams during this podcast. And then after points differential, it's points scored. And then, by the way, it's FIBA ranking. So these teams are going to continue to try to put up points and fight to the finish on the points differential in case they're one of these teams that end up at 1-2 and need a tiebreaker to get in as one of the 3 seeds. And so as we zero in on this slate, there are 3 1-1 teams that I think are the ones that are going to have a bit of an edge in terms of fighting for that point differential. So that's Italy. They're 1-1. They play Nigeria. Then we've got Germany, 1-1 playing Australia. And then, of course, the Czech Republic, 1-1 playing the U.S. And although we think they're going to lose and potentially lose big, they still can qualify. And so when all else fails on this slate, if you're looking at one of those 1-1 teams, to me, they get a little bit of a bump for their players to play bigger minutes down the stretch. So with that in mind, let's break these games down one at a time like we always do based on the start time, beginning with France and Iran. They start Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. And France, big favorites here, Coach, 28-point favorites. Lowest total on the board, only 157.5.
Yeah.
So France, as one of those 2-0 teams, they are already locked in to the medal round, but they only have the second best point differential of the 2-0 teams. So they do have something to play for, but it should be a pretty easy victory. So with all that being said, are you zeroing in on any of the French players in particular?
It's interesting here, and great explanation there. And by the way, too, with all that in mind, today and tomorrow, as these final games play out in pool play, that obviously the top two from each, or the top 6 advance to the medal round, where it's single elimination. There's no more chance. If you want gold or even a medal, you got to win to advance. So, and in this, with France, they've played good ball, and they've been a little bit more heavier, leaning on some of their key players. So what I want to do, and what I'll do with each team when I'm pointing it out, is sort of go over, where those minutes are being dispersed amongst the players and who's stepping up statistically. And we know for France, you go no further than Fournier. I mean, he's the one that beat the Americans, and he's getting 31 minutes. And, as all of these games have gone on, if this is the first pod you're catching, we're trying to just find that 25 to 28 or 29 minute window as really a sweet spot, because there's not many guys getting 30 plus, very, very few. So if they stay within that window, again, you may have a snowflake or two, but you're still in good shape. It's different than normal, where you have to everybody on fire and people playing full games. That's just not happening in the Olympics. But with France, Fournier has been your safest play. He's averaging 24.5 points a game, and he's chipping in enough on assists and rebounds, even though he's not a periphery stats guy, to make himself very consistent. But he's expensive. So Fournier certainly is there. And then we have a group of 3 guys that are well in play for me here again. But the question is, can you afford them? And that's Nicolas Batum. He's averaging 29, along with DeColo, who's really been solid for them. 15 points, 6.5 assists, really steady, 2 steals. And, his price isn't bad. So he's a definite consideration. And then Rudy Gobert is in that sweet spot also. But, up and down, only 10 points per game. And surprisingly, not double digits in rebounds, which really is interesting. Only 9.5. He's close. But, for his price, he definitely has not made his number. After that, you've got a lot of guys in the teens, and that's what makes France dangerous. None of these guys are in the sweet spot for us, but I think you can consider them, and that's Hurdle, who's 21 minutes a game, 8 points. TLC's only at 18 with 5.5 points. Poirier, the big man's only getting 15 minutes, but he's at almost 9 points a game, so he could always grab a little run. Yabusele, who he thought would be really strong, he's only playing 12 minutes a game, and I know he's been hurt on and off, but certainly has fallen out of grace for the purposes of DFS. So that really is it for France. I think that group, especially that top 4 of Fournier, Batum, DeColo, and Gobert, having some exposure with those guys if they fit into salary, I think makes a lot of sense here. Not expecting monster minutes down the stretch from the top guys like in some of these other games. So I'm not going to have a real strong French connection here, but definitely some exposure. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean the four key starters there, the key players for their winning prospects. And in terms of this slate, Fournier is my favorite. 8,400 for that type of output is pretty good. Again, if you're new to Olympic basketball here in the pricing, it's not like the traditional NBA DFS that we play where we're looking for 6x return on everybody's price on DraftKings. A lot of these guys, if you get 4x, you're doing great. So Fournier 8,400, definitely playable. DeColo, like you said, definitely in play at 7,900. Those are probably my two favorite starters. And then with the bench guys that you mentioned, I agree. Those are the ones to consider. And they all trended up in that last game, a 20-point win over the Czech Republic. And if this is a big blowout against Iran, which we think it will be, and they get around those same minutes, then they're much better price tags than the starters. We don't think they're going to be as productive, but it's probably easier to get a 5x return on one of these guys like Hurdle, who was 11-2-7 in the last game. He's only 3,600 as a point guard. Poirier, who definitely took advantage of the decrease in minutes for Yabusele. He got 19 minutes, 14 points, 5 rebounds. He's only 3,700 as a center.
Dangerous.
So I like Poirier. I mean, he's skilled. I've watched him as a Celtic, and you get the minutes at that price. He's definitely in play. And then good old TLC, who's a little bit volatile. 4,100 as a shooting guard. He's playable. So those are the guys I'm zeroing in on France. But I agree. I don't want to get too much exposure to that side, but one or two for sure could make the final roster.
Absolutely.
All right, let's swing over to Iran, who after a decent first game had to deal with US in the second, and it didn't go very well. You could look at one of their guys, though, because they do get pretty good minutes for the starters. Your man, Jamshida Jafarabadi, scored pretty well against the U.S. He's 3,900 at either guard position. And then Yakshala Dekordi, 4,700, didn't do very well against the U.S., but those two guards, I think, are the cheap guys to consider for Iran because they've got the better matchups. DeColo and Fournier, they're not lockdown defenders. And with those guys getting big minutes and some shots, again, you could pay off the price tag because you don't need, you don't need a 6x return here to make it work. And then my man Haddadi, solid again, even against the U.S., 15-6-1, but he's 9,000. He's got to deal with Gobert. I think he can play a fine game. Will it be enough? It's questionable. He's not my favorite option here at that price tag. On this 4-game slate, the one thing that's changed for me, Coach, is that there's more options here than we've had in some of these other slates. There's different builds that you can make. There's more guys in the mid-tier between 5,000 and 8,000 to consider. So I don't think you need to pay up there with a tough defensive matchup with Gobert.
I agree. That I want to point out again, you had read the spread here, and I just called it up to get the most recent from our partners at BetUS.com.pa. The concern with this France and Iran game is that total 158. It's 13.5 points lower than any of the other 3 games. So again, if Vegas is generally pretty close to on the money, that's a lot of DFS points left on the table in that game that aren't going to be dispersed like in the other 3 games. So you combine the fact that it's a 28-point spread, which is the biggest. It's definitely by far the lowest at 158. That has to make you not want to stack this game whatsoever. So, just wanted to reiterate that point because I think it's important. But, Yakcha, I'll just call him Yakcha. I got to say, I had had some faith in him early on, and he's played almost 31 minutes a game and, 15 points. But the problem is with him is, and we're learning this as we go, he's more of just a scorer and not quite as much of an all-around talent. He's gotten very few assists and steals and that kind of thing. So not as excited about him as I was. I do think, who's your Haddadi at 26 minutes, and now he goes, against that interior defense of France, which is nasty. I mean, it really hurt the Americans. I think with his price raised up, I don't see him being playable either. But the guy that I'm looking at here is Jamshid. And Jamshid is, 15 points a game in only 25 minutes. If that can drift, close to that 30 mark, like Yakcha, that's really going to help him. Plus, he shows a little bit more of an all-around game. 5 assists per game, which is outstanding, and a couple rebounds. I think if I do go to an Iraqi player, Jamshid is the guy. Yeah,
right.
And after that, though, crapshoot in my opinion. I don't think they have anybody else that really steps up. No one else averaging more than 5 points. Well, I'm sorry, Daverpana, whatever, is 8 points per game, but only in 13 minutes. So not even going to waste time going over the rest of these Iranian players. Did I say Iraqi?
Yeah.
Yeah, Iranian is what I meant to say.
Right.
So I understand if you look at Yakcha, Hadidi, or Jamshid, those are the only 3 that even have a chance. But Jamshid is the one I think has the biggest ceiling, and all the rest of the bench guys not worth, in my opinion, a gamble like that, even if they're cheap, because they're all getting low minutes and they're not very skilled. So
yeah, the one skill I thought was decent, Reza Fair, off the bench, lefty shooter. He looked pretty good with his stroke. He did score 12 points, got 24 minutes, 3,700. So if you needed to save $200 from Jamshid, you could look there. But I agree. Other than that, we pass Iran. There are some other value plays here later in the slate that are attractive. So let's turn to game 2. Yeah. And the next 2 games are going to be Group B, Coach. We've got Nigeria, Italy, Germany, Australia, this group of death. Australia, the only team set to advance for sure at 2-0. And Nigeria, like we said, they are still alive at 0-2. They need a big win, though, here against Italy. And they're 6.5-point underdogs. Total is much better here, 174.5.
Yes.
So why don't you take us through Nigeria, led by our good friend here, Mr. Nawara?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big stunner so far. They came in with all the hoopla, 8 NBA players, beat a bunch of teams in the prelims, and they came in feeling they had a great shot at not just a medal, but maybe even the gold. And they're sitting here at 0-2, and they could go 0-3. There's no question about it. So very disappointing. Mike Brown's the coach, by the way, but I have to give him credit. I know it's only 2 games and this is the 3rd, but he's stuck with his rotational plan. He whatever they agreed to with these guys to be part of this team. I guarantee he must have told them, listen, we're going to run deep. Everybody's going to get minutes, and that maybe convinced some of these guys to play, because to have 8 NBA commitments from Nigeria, that's pretty amazing. And, it's worked for them in the sense that, their depth has been good, but it's worked against them, because when I've watched Nigeria, Andrew, I get the big bench thing and the depth and keeping people fresh, but there's also, to me, a part about chemistry and clicking. And, if you're constantly rotating guys out, how do you get into any rhythm with anybody? I mean, you're always looking in a different, teammate that's out there. And I think that's caused them to just not quite have that chemistry. And in the friendly games or prelim games, yeah, that works great, because all the teams are playing everybody, because everybody wants to see who's got what and get them some run. But now the rest of these teams, their bench is shortened up. They're playing their main guys, whereas Nigeria is still playing everybody. And that, variance went against them, which you would anticipate that it would. We got to start with Nawara. I mean, he was absolutely incredible. Slate breaker last time out. And
nothing but net all night long.
All night long. I mean, and smooth as silk too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, 2 things you can look at here. number one, you would think there has to be a little bit of regression, because I think he could have closed his eyes and threw it backwards and it would have swished in. He was just unconscious. But on the good side is, man, his minutes went way up, his usage all the way around, and his production is ridiculous. So he's up to 27 minutes. So he's the only guy on this Nigerian team that has snuck into that zone of where, that sweet spot zone for us. And man, he's a hard guy to pass up here. Almost 22 points. He's hitting the glass, 5 rebounds, 2.5 steals. Just getting it done all over the place, and has really come out to be the team leader with this team. So I'm very interested in him. I think he may be a guy in this matchup that can step up again and do very well. I don't think they have a great match up for him defensively. So he's high on my list. Then after that, though, we're back into that whole thing, why I faded Nigeria the first 2 games. You've got between 24 minutes and 12 minutes for the next 7 guys. So, Vincent, Oni, Okogie, Okpala, Emigano, Achua, Metu, Okafor, those guys are all getting decent minutes, all getting something done. But the eye test in watching this, I like Precious Achua. He's at 19 minutes, which could, again, it's not in our sweet spot, but his price is a little bit better. And here's the thing. He was in foul trouble. And when he was in, he was extremely efficient. Really was impressed. He's getting double digit scoring now. He's hitting the glass, and he's not one dimensional. I mean, he's got a couple of steals. He has some blocks. I think he is a guy, eye test wise, maybe not as much statistical, is a guy on the rise. So very interested in Nwora and Achua. The other guys aren't bad, but as I read them off, I mean, I didn't even name Agata, Nwamu, and Udo, because their minutes are slipped slightly under double digits, but it's just too much usage spread, too much sharing of the ball past that really Nwora, and then Achua just on, watching him get more confident and get a little bit more play. And if he stays out of foul trouble, could really be a solid add at his number.
Yeah, for me with Nwora, the way that he looked, the overall usage minutes, and opportunity, he's locked in for me at 5,100. There's nobody on the slate who can, give you that return.
Do you think he'll be the highest owned on the whole slate? I do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
And I'm happy to put him in, because you said,
not to interrupt you, but don't fade somebody like that just because you want to be contrarian and take something down. We talk about this with our members in the NBA all the time. If somebody's mispriced and it is just perfect, you have to use them. For me, anyway, in a cash and single entry game, I do not want to fade Nwora at 5,100 when 90% of the people are going to have him. And if he has that game that we expect, now you're chasing, and just to be different. So as a blocker in cash games, even if you play that, you're playing the other guy or a group of people in the 50-50, and you see all that Nwora across the board, you just have to have him, because even if he has a down game, everybody else has a little bit of a down game with him, and there's no guarantee that you're going to find anybody. Well, I know you won't at 5,100 that has a better shot at a bigger game. So just wanted to mention that. I know it's boring, because when everybody has him, it's almost like you don't even care what he does, because it doesn't matter. But you got to have him, in my opinion, Andrew.
Yeah, and for me, you have to have him because he's 5,100. If it was Luka, and you're talking about a $12,000 stud who everybody thinks is going to smash, then you can fade him because you can come up with a different build.
Sure.
At 5,100, if you fade him, it's not like all of a sudden you're getting 2 more studs in your lineup.
No.
As if you fade a guy like Luka, and then your entire build is different. So
hey, you're getting Dirk ticked off over here. You better watch it.
Dirk understands the premium price for a Hall of Famer.
He gets it. He always took the discount to stay in Dallas all those years.
Yeah.
Are you kidding?
He definitely gets it. So after Nwora, I agree with you on the minutes and the frustrating distribution of usage. But the Nigerian team, I think, has the best overall price tags on this slate. I think, in addition to Nawara, at least one of these guys is going to be in the winning lineup. The problem is, how do you pick it? And it is tough to predict. Like you said, based on the eye test, I think Achua is the next guy that you want, but he's 6,700. All the other guys who are getting the big minutes are less than that.
Yeah.
So somebody like Okpala at 3,500 is a little bit more interesting to me, but there's a lot more volatility with a guy like that. Look at his line last game: 5.6 rebounds, 2 assists, 5 steals.
Yeah.
So that's a tremendous return on 3,500. But will he get 5 steals again? Probably not. And we know that he's not a big usage guy offensively. So the point is just, if you're going to play one lineup in cash, maybe Okpala is not the guy to trust. But if you're going to play 3 or 4 lineups, he's the perfect GPP option to get in one lineup.
Sure.
I think I like him more than some of these other guys because he does get the start and the minutes. Vincent is also in that category for me at 5,300. He took 10 3-pointers in the last game.
That is a plus.
If he gets hot, he could be the guy. Okogie has had a good game and a bad game. Just like we talked about, he's volatile.
That's him.
So 4,600, he's GPP only for me. Emagano, he runs the show for that second unit. At 3,700, he could be the guy. Metu can stuff the stat sheet. 3-5, 2-1, 2 last game, only 13 minutes, and he did all that. 4,900, he could be the guy. Okafor, don't like him as much at 5,600. So, again, it comes down to how many lineups you're going to play. I'd get Nawar in there no matter what, and then, take a shot on one of those guys in a GPP in cash. Little tougher to invest there.
I agree.
All right, Coach. Over on the Italian side, the favorites here at 1-1, so they're in that 1-1 category, like Germany in the next game. These guys have a point differential of 7. Yeah. Germany has a point differential of -3. So Italy is in a better spot here in Group B. Even if they lose to potentially advance at 1 and 2, but it's too close for comfort. So I think they're going to have to push to the end here against Nigeria, win or lose because of that point differential. So I think Italy is a good team to invest in. And they, like Nigeria, have some nice options. A little bit more expensive for their starting 5, but right. Guys that I think you can trust a little bit more, like Mannion at 5,700. I trust him more than Vincent at 53. He bounced back with a real nice game, 21.7 assists.
Yeah, of course, because I played him in the first round.
Right. So Mannion definitely in play for me. Fontecchio, 2 solid games in a row. They're big forward. You can play him at either forward spot, 7,100. He gives you everything you like in terms of minutes and shots. So he's in play for me. And all 3 other starters are playable. This is probably the only team where I think you can play any of the 5 starters. Tonnet, still only 5,000 as shooting guard. Disappointed in game 2, but he was strong in game 1. Melli, big disappointment in game 2. He was strong in game 1. He's still only 5,400. Still got 24 minutes, just didn't do anything offensively. Yeah. And it won't be easy against Achua and Nigeria's length and athleticism, but wouldn't shock me if he does it. Same thing with Polonara. He's the cheapest, and he's one of the guys who was weak in game 1 but strong in game 2. Almost had a double-double in 23 minutes, got 12 shots. So Polonara is in play for me. With the bench, I'm not going to go there. Gallinari at 8,300 is a little bit too much for me. And then Paola, only 11 minutes at that guard spot. So I do like Italy here, and I will probably have 2 starters out of that group of 5 in most of my lineups.
Yeah, I think that's a smart play. I really like the Italian team and how they play and, the pace and just everything about them. The line in that game, by the way, is, I believe you may have mentioned, but Italy's only favored by 6. And that 174.5 number. I mean, I really, that starts to interest me. I'll tell you, Fontecchio is the guy that surprised me the most of this Italian team. I did not expect him to be consistently their top performer. He's almost at 30 minutes, so that brings him into play immediately. 21 points a game, Andrew, with 4 rebounds, an assist, and a steal and a half, and even a block a game. So he has been, I think, in some of the optimals for sure, and a guy that I think you just have to look at. And then the second best player on the team, Tonit, same thing, 27 minutes, a solid 13 points a game, and some stats across the board. So those are the two that we slept on a little bit, and I think now have to be in the discussion because the minutes, the usage, and the price is right. Then we get into, a little bit more of a confusing spot here. Melli, again, great first game, poor second game. Still, like you said, got the 25 minutes, but only 6.5 points per game out of those first 2 games. He's got 13 points in 2 games total, which is a concern. And like you mentioned, the Nigerians have a ton of inside athleticism that are going to really make it tough on Melli. So he's not on my list. Mannion, again, frustrating. I was so high on him going into this. And that first game, he just, didn't get all the minutes at point that I thought he would and didn't quite have it. But I know he had the potential. I guess that's on me for after 1 game sample size of bailing. But then he did step up, and I think he will continue to. I think he's very playable here. He's 24 minutes a game. Up to 15.5 points with 7 assists. I mean, he's active. Everything runs through him when he's in there, and he becomes in play for me again. So if he has a poor game, Andrew, I'm going to be sending that Bitmoji with the guy swearing and everything because, on again, off again guy. But I'm crossing my fingers that Mannion gets it done. But then, the Gallinari thing, you made a good point. His price is high. I expected him to take more shots and score more for them, but he's only at 22 minutes, which is, 6th on the team, which is surprising to me as well. And he's not a rebounder that much that we know of. I mean, occasionally he will, but 2 rebounds a game and only 11.5 points, low 20s in minutes. As much as I love Gallo and certainly could have a big game, I just can't go there. And then after that, it's just, Pollinar, yes, he's gotten some games, but he's just middle of the road. And then all those bench guys, just not enough minutes, not enough usage. So for me, you start with Fontecchio, you look at Tonit, you look at Mannion, and I think those are the key guys. And I'd love to have 2 of those guys as well, because I think this will be a good game.
All right, well, let's go to the other game in Group B. It's Germany and Australia. 4:20 a.m. Eastern. Germany is that 1-1 team that's really got a battle here. If they don't win, they can still advance with that point differential. So let's start with Germany, Coach. What are your thoughts there?
Well, it's interesting with Germany. I expected them to be more heavy on the minutes for their top 5 guys, 6 guys, maybe 7 at the very most. But they've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 guys averaging double digits in minutes. So again, one of those DFS red flags, are you going to get enough out of these guys? Now, the top 3 are interesting to me, and I'll explain why. Obst, who's been solid through both games, minutes-wise, 30 minutes per game. But my concern with him is he does somewhat a whole lot of nothing out there other than score a few points. I mean, how do you play? So he's basically played 60 minutes of basketball in those 2 games out of the possible 80, and 12 points is respectable. But after that, it's goose eggs, man. Guess how many rebounds for the tournament he has?
1.
0. And he's got only 1 assist. 2 assists and 2 steals. That's it. No block shots, 0 rebounds. So not a DFS guy, even with the minutes. I hope he gets more ownership than he should, just because people see that, almost 30-minute mark. The guy that I like the best, I think he's their best player, is Lowe. I mean, didn't have the game I wanted him to the last time out, but he's at 29 minutes, almost 19 a game, and he does fill the stat sheet. 6.5 assists per game. Gets some rebounds. He's got 6 rebounds in the tournament. I think he's the most consistent, reliable guy on this squad. I'm very interested in him again. Then we have this dilemma, and we've gone back and forth. Both of us have on this, is Bonga. We know he's going to get minutes. He's getting 25 per game. We know he's a stout defender and he can do some things, but he disappears a lot of times scoring the ball. And that's what we've seen these 2 games. I mean, he scored some in a stretch. He's averaging 9 for the 2 games. He's going to get some stocks. That's the one nice thing about Bonga. But how many assists, how many rebounds, it's decent enough to consider him. But I love him as a GPP play, because I think he could be one of those guys that can contribute to a somewhat of a slate breaker, but I'm not sure that I have the confidence to roll him out in my cash games, but he's on the bubble. One guy that we didn't talk about that much in the first 2 games that I guess we really do need to bring up now is Voigtman. Voigtman, 25 minutes, surprisingly, didn't see that coming, and a really solid 11 points, 6.5 rebounds per game, 2.5 assists, steal. So, I mean, he deserves some interest here, and he's shooting the ball out of his mind too. I mean, he doesn't shoot that much, but he's 61% from the field somehow, and 100% from the line. So you're going to get the most from him in that minute structure, and no one talks about him. We don't know that much about him, but maybe he's a sneaky guy, Andrew. I can't wait to hear your take on him, because I think I may slide him in there in one of those last spots at what is a very fair price. After that, you've got the under 20 group right in that realm of the depth of the bench. Giffey, Thyman, Barthel, who had a decent little stretch in the game, and then my man Mo Wagner. I still just am perplexed of all of his stops. He never seems to get very many minutes, and he seems to produce when he's in there. I mean, he's averaging 16 minutes a game. That's it. 14.5 points, though. So I don't understand. I don't trust those minutes. I like his output, but not for cash. Maybe if you think this is the game they do give him 25 minutes, I think he could crush it, but I don't trust it. And then the rest of the bench, not worth mentioning, but I think you got some very rosterable guys on this side of the ball.
Yeah, I'll just go backwards there from Wagner. I mean, he's been awesome per minute, but only played 12 minutes in the last game. So no way I'm paying 8,700 for him. If they shift around, if Voigtman gets hurt, then sure, he could pay it off. But I'd rather go to one of these other guys like Lowe as a starter at 7,400. Much rather invest in him. He's also the guy that I agree he's the most trustworthy on this team. So he's the one guy I'd want to play the most. Voigtman, like you said, 19-7 in the last game. The first game he just wasn't involved offensively, but there aren't many guys here that you can get for 6,100 with that type of a stat line and upside. So, he did take advantage of Achua being in foul trouble against Nigeria. He's a bigger guy. So, he's playable. It should be a little tougher matchup with Baines banging against him. And, he's got the size to thwart him a little bit, but definitely playable at 6,100. Bonga, like you said, probably a little more of a GPP, but decent price. Obst, playable at 3,900 as a punt play. We've already talked about a couple guards in that price range on this slate, but he's pretty reliable. He has been so far for scoring, not the other stats, but he's a fine punt play if you want. And Tiemann was really good in the last game, almost a double-double at 3,600. Definitely worth playing, but I don't want to play anybody off that bench, like you said. Over with Australia, the
Yes.
8.5-point favorites here at 2-0, coach. Again, they are automatically in, but
Yeah.
they have the lowest point differential of the 4 undefeated teams. So I do think they will, continue to play their game and try to get it done and keep that margin of victory as high as they can. Now, Paddy Mills, we got to start there. Over 10,000 on this slate. 17 shots in the last game. We like that. Yeah, he was only 2 for 9 on threes, though. Played 36 minutes. So a lot to like there. But at 10-1, he's very expensive because, again, this is a slate where you can get several guys at 6, 7, 8,000 and build more of a balanced lineup if you want, and he makes it tougher. So he's playable, but not my favorite. Ingles, 9,200. Love his game overall, and one of my favorite Olympians here. But 9,200, I think he'll get some Bonga defense, so he's not my favorite play here. Baines and Landau, the two bigs, played much better in the last game. They're both in the $4,000 range. I could see them paying it off again. Delhi, not going to go there. Thibault, 8,000, so he's cheaper than Ingles and Mills again. Solid across the board again, but not many shots, as usual. So he's on the fringes for me. Last guy in, maybe. Nick Kay, another good game. He was 6 of 7 from the field, 15 and 7. Really nice for 4,500. So those 3 bigs for Australia, they're all playable. Exum, he's had one solid game, one down game. Probably won't go there. So, I like Australia as a team here. But with all 3 of their bigs in that 4K range being playable, I just think it's really hard to predict. It's I think I'd probably rather go elsewhere.
Yeah, it's Australia. You would think would be easy to roster some guys and go, but man, it's hard to find something value enough that you can play them and feel good about it. So I'm with you. The spread in this game, by the way, it's Australia only favored by 8.5. So some respect for the German team. That 171.5 total, it's solid. It's the 3rd highest, but at least it's right in that ballpark, and that's the one that's 13.5 higher than France and Iran. For me, Kay has grown on me through this tournament. I think that, I had seen him play in a couple of friendlies, and he was good, but that minute split of the 3 bigs, like you mentioned, with Landell and Baines, scared me away. But Kay's the guy that's emerged. He's almost 27 minutes now, 13.5 points, 7.5 rebounds. So, I don't think it's a fluke. I think he is the go-to big. And at that price, he's one of my favorite secret squirrels on this whole slate. He could be in 100% of my cash lineups. I just like the matchup for him here. And, I'm comfortable enough that he's one of the key bigs for them that's going to get it done. So I wanted to start with him. Paddy is Paddy. I like him. That price, though, rough. And I want to go with a little bit more of a medium build if possible. And Mills definitely messes that up. And Ingles isn't far behind him. So I don't think either one is a bad play whatsoever. But I just don't want to spend all the money on those guys in this game. I think I'd rather spread it out. So that brings Thibault and Exum back into consideration for me because let's face it, I know they're better GPP plays because there's risk. Now, they're both averaging exactly the same amount of minutes, just about 22. And, they're not scoring a ton, 7 and 6. They're almost identical statistic-wise, but there's the chance they get hot or they get on a run. We know they're both capable. They've done it in NBA games where both of them have done an outstanding job. Thibault more on the stock side, Exum more on the scoring and assist side, but I'm not counting them out. I wouldn't play both, but one of the two definitely has the potential at their lower price now than it was to make that the lineup with me. After that, I'm not going deeper. Like I said, I think Delhi's on the way down. With really touting K, I think it'd be silly to go with Landale or Baines because you're hoping they don't get the minutes. And then the rest of the guys, are not worth mentioning. So, I mean, you certainly can take one of your big buy-ups and go with either Mills or Ingles. I would go Mills over the two of them if I had to. But, if you're looking to have some exposure to Australia, I think that sweet spot of guys is K, Thibault, and Exum, specifically K.
All right, Coach. One game to go here on this 4-game slate.
Yeah.
Hope folks are enjoying these in-depth discussions. And by the way, if you're playing the 1-game slates on DraftKings, hopefully this helps you get ready for those where you're going to have to roster more of these guys. And then if you want our lineups, jump in with us as a member at dfscoachtalk.com. We give out the full coach's clipboard for these slates on DraftKings. And then we give out full lineups for the U.S. single game contests on FanDuel. We got the U.S. coming up next here. So dfscoachtalk.com if you'd like to grab our lineups. Once you sign up, we will invite you into our Discord with an email. Try the 3-day pass. You can try our $88 summer special all the way until September 7th. So jump in with us. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us on Twitter at DFS Coach Talk. Now, Coach, game 4 here, 8 a.m. on Saturday.
Yes.
So you might want to set your lineups tonight just in case.
Yes.
Just in case you don't get up in time. But it'll be the game will be waiting there for you at breakfast time if you want to watch how these guys do. U.S. back on track after the big win over Iran, but now they've got the Czech Republic. 24.5-point favorites, Coach, against the Czech Republic team that is also 1-1.
Right.
Highest total on the board here, 183.5. And the point differential for the Czech Republic is -14. So if they're going to lose to the U.S., they still have a chance, but they need to try to keep it close. So with that motivation, are you interested in any of their players?
They've been somewhat of a train wreck to me. They have played such a deep bench that was unexpected. I expected Sadaransky, Vesely, Balvin, Otta, the main guys, maybe Shib as well, to get just, 30 minutes a game. Now you've got Sadaransky, who is been in consideration. I've rostered him, and I think that he deserves to be. He's 34.3 minutes, which is very stout in this tournament. Nobody's playing up in that range, but a little underwhelming at times, but enough that he's making it. I mean, only 10 points per game, which is okay. The nice thing is 9 assists and 3 steals per game. So, I'm still on the Sado bandwagon. I think he's by far the best player on this team, in my opinion. And I'd like to roster him again, and I very well may, especially since it's going to be high tempo. But he is going to get a lot of defensive attention. I think Drew Holiday is going to be up in his shorts, and that scares me a little bit. So you got to love the pace, though. You got to love the fact that, they're going to need him out there against the U.S. as much as they can. So, not a complete slam dunk, but I think Sado deserves the first mention. I really do. And, definitely considering putting him in there. Now, the rest of the guys, it's much more complicated. I mean, that next level that I expected to be a little bit more dominant. Yes, Vesely's been 28.5 minutes, 15 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. He's been terrific. And he's certainly the other guy to Sadaransky, I think, that you can absolutely go to here. Again, higher pace game, but he is going to get some tough defensive attention as well. Without question, those will be the two guys that are keyed on by the U.S. team. But I'm tempted to go both Sadaransky and Vesely just because of what I'm expecting, minutes, pace, etc. And I don't think that if the U.S. is up 25, that those guys are just going to get yanked out and they go to the second string guys. I think they're going to want to stay in it, keep it respectable, and I think those guys will get solid runs. So this is the one team where I'm going right to the top of their board for their top 2 guys, in my opinion. So after that, I won't go there, but they're all playable, but they're all out of that sweet spot. tons of guys here. Baldwin, 23 minutes. Otta, 23. Bocic, 23. Shib, 20, and I liked him in stretches. And then you also have double digits for Serena at 15 and Jelinek at 15 and Petraka at 14. So in other words, all those guys are just chopping away at each other, making themselves, in a hole somewhat unplayable. Shib did impress me in stretches. I've got a little consideration there, but I'm not going to mess around with these middle guys and try to determine which one's going to get 22 minutes, which one's going to get 18, and how effective they're going to be. Pretty simple for me for the checks. I'm going right to the top with Sadaransky and Vesely.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start. I like their minutes, their usage, their success so far, and their price. 8,100 for Sado, only 7,000 for Vesely on the main slate.
Yep.
Like you said, though, the trade-off is Drew Holiday clamping down on him. How much does that limit him? So, I'm very interested in both of them. I think there's a good chance I will go with them. And they also do make sense for me on the single game showdown slate on FanDuel.
Yes.
The prices are reasonable. So that's a great place to focus in on. For the rest of the group, Balvin is my favorite. He's been solid as that center, and his price is a little bit low, I think, 4,500. Really good numbers so far.
Yeah.
Even against Gobert in the last one, 18 and 8. So
yeah.
I like Balvin here. Again, tough matchup with Bam, but for 4,500, he's definitely playable for me. Those are my favorites. Auda's been solid, but he's 5,500. Shilb, one good game, one down game. I don't want to mess with the other guys. So I think that's as deep as you need to go. Also
Really?
on the FanDuel one game contest.
Yep. I agree completely.
All right, Coach. Hopefully we've saved the best team for last. We know that they've lost once, but they can overcome that and still bring home the gold. That is the US of A. And although they are the best team top to bottom, future Hall of Famers here, I'm not in love with these price tags, Coach. They're very, very expensive. We've talked about it on every slate. For the main slate on DraftKings, all these guys, 7, 8, 9, 10,000, but they're only getting, 23, 24 minutes tops.
Right.
Maybe they get a couple more minutes here, the starters, Lillard, Durant, maybe they get 25, but ultra expensive. I think if I had to pick one, Durant, just he's been adding the stocks here, 10-2. I don't think Vesely can stop him, but only 8 shots in the last game. Lillard took 15. So it's just tough. On my main lineup on DraftKings, I'm not going to have either one of them. And Drew Holiday, much better price at 89, but he's not getting as many shots, even though he started in that last game. I just don't want to do that. So not on the main slate for me. Definitely looking at those guys on the one game showdown. Booker was in the starting lineup, of course. That was the big change in game 2. So he was decent. Bam's minutes went down with the bench. Levine was awesome in his 22 minutes, 13 points, 8 assists, 8,800, GPP. If you want to go there, I mean, the nice thing about Levine is that he is a shooting guard, and that's a tougher position to find somebody that you like on DraftKings. So you could go there. Everybody else, I'm just not going to invest, 8,000 for these bench guys. Tatum got the most shots. But after that, just too much money for the amount of opportunities.
I 100% agree. I think it's a shame, DraftKings has just so egregiously overpriced all these guys. I mean, if you put 2 or 3 of these guys in there, you're scrapping for, the bench, the undesirables that we've always called them. You just can't do it. It just doesn't make sense. No one's getting, like you said, over 25 minutes. The shots are being, split up. And again, a big spread in this game. How do you trust anybody to get it done? there's not a guy on the US side that I look at and say, oh, that's a really fair, valuable, value price that you can play a guy. It's so hard. I mean, I may not have any Americans in this lineup.
Yep.
And not really be concerned about it because of them splitting it up. Now, when we get down the road and it's, single elimination and we're looking at Australia, Spain, these guys, I think that's when you can really hone in, spend your money on the Durants and Lillards and maybe a couple of the other guys, but not here. So for me, if I have enough salary, which I doubt that I will, the two guys that are at least you don't break the bank by playing are the same two that I think you mentioned, Levine and Booker, just for the additional time maybe for Booker. And Levine looked like he was getting back into a good role after having to sit out like a week with the COVID thing before the Olympics started. So maybe those two guys, but I think this will be a team effort. I think that they're going to win handily. And I think they're going to want to position themselves to be fresh because they know they're up against it when it comes to the medal round in the next go around. So I'll be waving the USA flag, but probably rooting for some of the Czech guys even more, as crazy as that sounds.
Yeah, exactly. And then again, it is a big difference with DraftKings and FanDuel. We're both ready to pass on US on DraftKings, but on FanDuel, you're going to want to, and you can afford a couple of those studs on FanDuel. So if you want those lineups for us, we'll have 3 lineups for you. DFSCoachDoc.com, full lineups on FanDuel that you can play. Again, the coach's clipboard on DraftKings. Coach, any final thoughts here?
Yeah, if you're checking this out on YouTube, please take a second, hit the thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and click the alert up in the right corner. For our members, I just put out a new podcast provider schedule last night that takes us all the way through August. And you're going to want to know when these pods post. We've got the Olympics happening now. We've got the NBA Summer League, which we're going to have tons of podcasts. We have some baseball pods coming up in August. And then, golf pod every week. So, I mean, those are, popping up there at different times. But if you hit that thumbs up, subscribe, and the alert button, then you'll know when things are going to come up there. And we'd love to have you listen in. And if you're not a member and you're just taking this information in, again, we want you to be able to get the most out of it and build some winners. If you do have some winners, please shoot us a note in YouTube so that we can shout you out and say great job. And we really appreciate it. We're at DFS Coach Talk on Twitter. Andrew is at Language Olympic. I am at JOESARVADI. And there's no better time than the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I say this every Friday. Try that 3-day pass for $10. It's going to be phenomenal. We're going to have baseball like million games all weekend. Golf weekend only lineups tonight with something we're really excited. We've got all our guys way up on the leaderboard, and that for the Olympics is going to be a blast. And then you get all of this basketball, and before you know it, we're going to be also jumping into the NBA Summer League. So you got all that stuff. Check us out. And also, if you're listening to this on audio, if you're on any of the landing spots, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Stitcher, iHeart, all of them, we're there. Only one more day tomorrow, Andrew, and then drawing for 1 week free membership from that month of July that is going to be done. All you have to do to qualify, if you're listening audio podcast, then hit the 5 stars and a quick comment. It can be 2-3 words. Then our man Joe Stanton tomorrow at the end of the day will be pulling a random person to win that 1 week free membership. So we'd love to have you join us. We appreciate you letting us spend this time with you. And that's the word, Andrew. That's what I got.
Definitely. Hope that helped everybody get ready for the slates tonight. Have a lot of fun. Go USA. Let's get it back on track. And we'll be back here for the next slate, of course, as the Olympics roll on. So thank you for tuning in on behalf of the coach and the rest of the DFS Coach Talk team. I'm Andrew Hanson. We'll see you next time as we look to crush it in DFS.